Hey guys. Tonight we drift backward, farther back than Rome, longer ago than Greece, into the dry, breathless cradle of Iran before Islam. You're not strolling down neon-lit boulevards or cobbled medieval lanes tonight. No, you're climbing an ancient plateau where the sun bakes everything into silence. The dirt crunches beneath your sandals, dry as crushed bone, and the wind carries the faintest hint of something spicy and sacred: ashes, incense, and a whisper of old fire. This is the land of high deserts and higher beliefs. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this world. The water's not clean, the laws are strict, and there's always someone watching you with suspicion, just in case you're impure. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, comment below with your city and what time you're listening. It's always cool to know who's falling asleep to ancient history around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Blank. Blank. You're walking along a jagged ridge where the earth splits open in quiet fury, revealing veins of copper and stone. The air here is sharp. It slices your breath into pieces. The sun presses down like judgment itself. But there's something holy in this harshness. Something old. Every rock feels like it's been holding its breath for 1,000 years. This is the Iranian plateau, vast and baked into a kind of permanent pause. You feel it in your knees as they creak on the incline. The long, slow ache of altitude and time. Every few steps, a wind kicks up from nowhere, whistling through ancient ruins and scattering grains of sand like forgotten prayers. It smells like sunburnt clay and something darker, maybe old blood. Maybe incense, maybe both. You're surrounded by crumbling remains of villages that once thrived on underground canals called qanats. Delicate engineering marvels that brought water where no river dared flow. You pause beside one, peering into the dark mouth of an ancient shaft, feeling a chill rise from the depths. That same chill slinks down your spine as you imagine the hands, calloused, cracked, possibly enslaved, that dug this lifeline with nothing but simple tools and sheer will. Above you, in the far distance, is a temple, not a towering spire, not some golden palace, just a modest stone structure squatting quietly against the sky. But from its roof, a pillar of smoke curls upward like a finger pointing to the gods. That's your goal. That smoke means fire, and fire, in this world, means truth. See, this isn't your average polytheistic patchwork. You're entering a world lit by Zoroastrianism, arguably the first major monotheistic religion. It's built on a simple but serious idea. The universe is a battlefield between light and dark, truth and lie, clean and unclean. And you're expected to pick a side every morning when you roll out of your straw mat. As you trudge closer, the rocky path sharpens under your feet. You adjust your rough tunic. It's always that same scratchy linen, and swipe at the sweat clinging to your brow. There's no shade, just the occasional scraggly tree, stubbornly alive despite everything. Even the plants here seem to follow some sacred law of suffering. And then you hear it. Faint chanting, low and rhythmic. The kind that gets into your chest. Like a heartbeat that doesn't belong to you. A small procession passes by. Their robes are white, their faces sunken, and they don't meet your eyes. One carries a bronze vessel holding something faintly glowing. The sacred fire. That fire, they say, is never supposed to die. It's tended day and night by priests called athrobans. They wash obsessively, avoiding anything that might taint their holiness. A fly in the temple is a crisis. A sneeze near the flame? Grounds for expulsion. You finally reach the temple courtyard. It's quiet, too quiet. No statues, no ornate offerings, just the fire, flickering inside a copper brazier. Surrounded by stone walls and silence. You stand there, listening to it crackle. It's not just a flame. It's the breath of Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord. Every flicker is a reminder. Truth must be tended constantly, or the lie will spread. But not everyone agrees. Historians still argue whether this stark style was a deliberate rejection of idol worship, or just a practical design in a fire-prone desert. Either way, the lack of imagery makes the faith feel internal, like the real altar is inside your own ribcage. You shift your weight. The stones beneath your feet are hot, the kind of heat that makes your toenails feel like they're sweating. You try to imagine this place filled with people, merchants from distant lands, pilgrims dragging weary camels, priests reciting the Gathas, those haunting hymns composed by Zoroaster himself. He might have walked this very ridge, barefoot, wrapped in wool, staring down into the burning horizon and asking the sky for answers. And here's the fringe detail scholars love to debate over candlelit library tables. Some believe Zoroaster wasn't a single man, but a composite of several wise teachers across centuries. Others think he really did receive divine visions after meditating in a cave for 10 years. Visions that painted the universe not in grays, but in the clearest black and white. Whatever the truth, you feel it, not in your brain, but in your bones. This land isn't subtle. The cliffs rise like knives. The wind whispers, but only in absolutes. You turn from the fire and begin to descend. The stone path narrow and uneven beneath your steps. Your calves burn. Your breath scrapes your throat. But the silence follows you, soft as dust, and the wind still carries that faint trace of smoke and solemnity. And just as you start to feel your legs ache a little too much, you spot another glow. Down the hillside, another fire temple, its flame licking at the dusk. You realize, they're everywhere. Hundreds of them, scattered like constellations across this land. Each one a quiet battle station in the war between good and evil. The sun dips lower, and your shadow stretches long across the dust. Somewhere behind you, a bell rings, deep and slow. Not a call to arms, a call to presence. And in that golden hour hush, when even the air seems to pause, you take your next steps toward the flickering light below. The path curls like a cracked ribbon through the hills, pulling you toward the next fire temple before night can fully descend. With every step, your feet grind dust into your sandals, and your ankles start to throb like dull drums. The flame in the distance flickers higher now, revealing the contours of its shelter, low walls, a flat roof, and a chimney where the sacred smoke escapes into the heavens. No towers, no stained glass, just ancient functionality with divine purpose. As you near, you catch the scent before you hear the sound. Bitter herbs, ash, and something faintly metallic. The air changes. It doesn't just fill your lungs. It settles into your skin like incense clings to priestly robes. Your eyes sting, not from smoke but from the sheer stillness. This isn't a place for spectacle. It's for discipline, for unblinking eyes and hands that never forget the rules. You push open the wooden gate, rough-hewn and bleached by centuries of sun. It groans like an old man shifting in bed. Inside the courtyard, it's even quieter than outside. The fire, housed in a raised brass urn, dances behind a fine mesh screen. Its flames are small, but they move with startling energy, like a spirit locked in a cage too tight. Around it, priests in flowing white robes chant in Avestan, the ancient liturgical language. Their voices rise and fall with the wind, like waves breaking softly on a stone shore. You don't understand the words, few do these days, but the cadence feels familiar, like a lullaby sung by firelight. One priest steps forward, his hands scrubbed raw from ritual washing. He doesn't acknowledge you. He's not here for an audience. He lifts a bundle of dry twigs, carefully selected, ritually cleaned, and offers them to the flame. It flares for a moment, gold flashing against his solemn face, then settles again. The gesture is quiet but powerful. In Zoroastrian belief, Fire is more than light or heat, it's consciousness. It sees, remembers, and demands purity. And purity is no joke here. You're not supposed to bring anything unclean near the flame, not your breath, not your sweat, certainly not a dead rat in your pocket. That's not sarcasm. There are detailed texts about what to do if, say, a rodent dies in your pantry. Spoiler. It's a whole process. You settle onto a stone bench along the wall, its surface still warm from the day's sun. From here, you notice something peculiar. There are no statues, no murals, no carvings of Ahura Mazda or holy figures. It's a religion with a god but no idol. No face to fawn over. Just the fire. Always the fire. Historians still argue whether this absence of imagery was a conscious push against the older Indo-Iranian pantheon, or just a result of early monotheism needing to stay abstract. Some say it kept people humble. Others say it made the divine feel distant. But here, now, it feels intentional, like you're meant to look inward, not upward. You reach for your canteen, only to remember it's empty. Again, the thirst scratches at your throat like a tiny rake. In a world that worships fire, water becomes paradoxically sacred, needed to live, but dangerous to the flame. Every element is a double-edged sword here. Every comfort comes with a warning label. A child enters the courtyard, barefoot and clutching a small cloth bundle. Her eyes dart to the priests, then to you. She tiptoes past the benches, carefully avoiding the boundary lines drawn in chalk, another purity rule, and approaches the offering dish near the entrance. From her bundle, she pulls a few dried rose petals and what looks like a single silver coin. She bows, leaves the items, and exits without a sound. You wonder what she's praying for. Health? Rain? A kinder father? You're not told. But in this world, every gesture toward the flame is a contract. You give something. You hope for something in return. It's not transactional in the cynical modern sense, it's sacred accounting. The balance of good thoughts, good words, good deeds, that's the Zoroastrian trinity. And if you think that sounds simple, think again. Every action has weight. Every lie is a vote for chaos. Even thinking impure thoughts is seen as feeding the wrong side in the cosmic war. So yeah, your brain? Not a safe space. Not here. A priest coughs gently, then disappears behind a curtain leading to the preparation chamber. You can almost imagine what's back there. Jars of perfumed oils, ceremonial tools, spare robes folded like linen clouds, maybe even a small fire pit for training apprentices. One quirky detail from a 10th century text describes a priest in training accidentally sneezing near the flame and being banished to clean bird droppings from the temple roof for a full season. Historians can't agree whether that was symbolic, satirical, or just very unlucky. You lean back and let your gaze linger on the flame again. Its shape is ever-changing, first a twisting ribbon, then a hungry bloom. It moves with its own rhythm, as if remembering stories long forgotten by people. There's something hypnotic about it. You feel your heartbeat slow. Your eyelids grow heavy. But just before you drift too far into fire-lit reverie, you hear a distant clang. Not from this temple, but from another down the ridge. A shift change? An emergency? No way to know, but it reminds you that you're not alone in this sacred world. These temples form a network, like scattered lanterns glowing across the darkness of the plateau. Always tended, always watched, and with that sound still echoing in your ears. You rise, slowly, knees protesting, and step back out into the gathering night. The wind's colder now. It tugs at your sleeves and lifts small curls of dust into the air. The fire behind you fades into a soft glow, like a memory already drifting from reach. You follow a path that curves downward into a darker valley, where you've heard whispers of a cave, a place where one man, long ago, claimed to hear the voice of truth itself. And just as your feet start to ache again, the first stones of that cave appear through the dusk like teeth in the earth's open mouth. The entrance to the cave is nothing spectacular. No epic archway. No carved lions' heads glaring down. Just a slit in the rock, half hidden by a wind-worn fig tree that clings to the cliff like a stubborn thought. You duck low, scraping your elbow on the jagged lip of the stone, and step into the shadow. The temperature drops instantly. After the dry sting of the sun, the cool air brushes your face like a damp cloth. Inside, it's silent, not the kind of silence you find in a quiet room, but the dense, pressing silence of a place that hasn't heard laughter, or even footsteps, in years. Your own breath becomes suspiciously loud, echoing off the damp walls like you're blowing through an empty jug. You reach out, palm grazing stone slick with condensation. It feels like you're walking through someone else's memory. This, they say, is where Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra, retreated. Whether for days, weeks, or decades, no one's sure. Historians still argue whether he was a real man, a myth, or something in between. Some claim he lived around 1200 BCE. Others say 600 BCE. A few fringe theories even place him as far back as 1700 BCE, which would make him almost prehistoric. Regardless, this cave has become part of his mythos, a crucible where ideas sharper than obsidian were formed in complete solitude. You step further in. The floor slopes downward, uneven and littered with pebbles. Your ankle wobbles, and for a second you think you'll fall. But you catch yourself, heart hammering, the way it does when you're startled awake from a dream where you're falling. The air here smells like wet stone and something faintly acidic, perhaps the breath of time itself. And then you find the chamber. Small, just enough room to lie down and stretch your arms. No torch holders, no offerings, no signs of decoration, just this raw, humming stillness. You imagine him, Zoroaster, sitting cross-legged on a stone ledge. Fingers steepled, eyes half closed, meditating on the universe. No cushion, no food deliveries, just him, hunger, and whatever messages the void decided to send. The visions he claimed to receive here were unlike anything the world had heard. Not stories of thunder gods battling sea monsters, or gods drunk on nectar, or divine kings demanding tribute. No, Zoroaster spoke of a singular, all-wise, all-good being, Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord. This god didn't crave sacrifices. He wanted truth, order, moral clarity, in a world soaked with chaotic pantheons. This was like switching from 100 flickering candles to a single, unwavering lantern. And yet, this lantern had a shadow. Enter Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit, a being not created by Ahura Mazda, but existing alongside him, a force of corruption, deception, rot, not evil in a cartoony, villainous sense, but as a natural opposition. Light needs dark, heat needs cold, truth needs the lie. You sit on the stone, feeling its chill bleed into your thighs. It's not comfortable, but it's grounding. You're part of this world now, even if just as a traveler, a student of the dust. One of the more curious elements of Zoroaster's teachings? Free will. You, yes, you, sitting there with sore knees and a thirsty throat, are not a pawn in this cosmic tug of war. You're a player. Every time you tell the truth, offer a kindness, or clean your hands before lighting a fire, you're tipping the scales toward order. And every time you lie, cheat, or skip your prayers, well, the destructive spirit chalks up another point. It's strangely empowering and exhausting. Imagine having to monitor your every word, every thought, even your dreams might count against you. One ancient commentary implies that dreaming of impure acts required a day of purification. Historians debate whether this was meant to be metaphorical, or just a really guilt-heavy way of managing nocturnal brain weirdness. You lean your head back and stare at the low ceiling. There's a fissure in the stone above, just wide enough for a trickle of light. Or maybe that's just your imagination. Either way, It gives the impression that the cave is listening. That something above, something old, calm, and all-seeing, is peeking in. They say Zoroaster emerged from this isolation with fire in his veins and a mission on his lips. He wasn't immediately popular. That part often gets skipped. In fact, he was ridiculed, exiled, even threatened. Imagine inventing a whole new way of seeing the cosmos. Then getting heckled by priests of the old gods who think you're just mad from cave mold. But slowly, painfully slowly, he found followers. One of the earliest was King Vishtaspa, who embraced the new faith and helped it spread. Not with swords, but with influence, trade, and temple building. And eventually, this once lonely cave prophet's ideas would become the state religion of a sprawling empire. You exhale, and the cave seems to answer with a soft groan, rock shifting somewhere deep below. A reminder that even this place, this stone-wrapped silence, is alive in its own slow way. You rise, brushing moss dust from your knees, and retrace your steps toward the entrance. Your shoulders brush the walls. Your hands trail along the damp rock. There's something comforting about the narrowness now, like being held gently by the earth. The sky outside is a bruised purple, stars blinking on like distant witchfires. You feel the night air touch your cheeks. And for the first time in hours, your lungs fill completely. You don't speak, you just walk, down the winding trail, past the fig tree, past the flickering lights of scattered farmsteads. The world feels different, not because it's changed, but because you have. You've seen the darkness, sat in it, listened, and just as you start to relax into the rhythm of the night, a sudden gust carries the sound of chanting from a nearby village temple. A sharper rhythm, not the slow chants of priests, but a more urgent tone, like something's been disturbed. You follow the sound, your body sore but your curiosity sharper than ever, and soon find yourself stepping out of spiritual mystery and into a universe newly divided between light and shadow. You walk through the soft, blue-tinted dark, your footsteps hushed against the sandy path. The chanting grows louder, steadier, layered like fabric woven on a loom. It's not chaotic, it's careful. Each voice slots into place like a puzzle piece, all threading around a single word repeated again and again. Asha. It means truth, or order, or maybe something bigger than either, like the way things are supposed to be when nothing is broken. There isn't an exact English translation, because frankly, English doesn't think that way. But here, in this world, Asha is everything. It's how you live, it's what you strive for. It's how you know you're on the side of light. And on the other side? Drudge, the lie, not just falsehood, but distortion, chaos, rot. You can't touch it, but you can feel it, when food goes bad too fast. When a trusted neighbor turns cruel. When your own mind whispers things you know you shouldn't think. The world of Zoroastrianism isn't about gods playing games. It's about a battlefield that runs straight through your own body. You arrive at the village temple. It's not much, mud brick walls, a thatched roof, a fire inside flickering like an anxious heartbeat. A group of elders sits cross-legged in a half-circle around the flame. Their eyes closed, their brows furrowed in concentration. They aren't just praying, they're choosing sides in a war. One of them opens his eyes and sees you. He gestures silently to an empty spot in the circle. You hesitate for half a second. Then step in, cross your legs, and lower your aching body to the ground. The floor is warm from the fire. Your knees pop like dry corn kernels. The priest nods and resumes chanting. You try to join in, mouth stumbling over the ancient syllables. It's okay. Nobody expects you to be perfect. They just expect you to try. Zoroastrianism's great theological contribution wasn't merely monotheism. It was dualism, cosmic good versus cosmic evil. Not locked in some abstract myth, but inside you. Ahura Mazda, the supreme God, doesn't punish you for failing. But he expects you to choose. Every morning, you wake up and make that choice again. There's no final conversion moment. Just countless small decisions, truth or lie, help or harm, courage or fear. And yes, that means you have a terrifying amount of responsibility. No blaming fate, or some trickster god, if your neighbor steals your grain, if your son gets sick, if your cattle die from spoiled feed, it might be the work of drudge. Or it might be you weren't vigilant enough. Goodness isn't a prize, it's a practice, like brushing your teeth, but with your soul. You stretch your fingers toward the fire. It warms your skin, but not in the usual way. It feels directional, like it's trying to warm your intentions. That may sound like mystical fluff, but in this world, the metaphor is the reality. Fire is the bridge between material and spiritual realms. Not a symbol of divinity, an actual, active presence, not worshipped, but revered. You don't pray to it, you pray with it. A fringe story some Zoroastrians tell, unofficially, of course, is that when a person dies, their soul must cross the Chinvat bridge. If you lived well, the bridge widens beneath your feet. If you lived selfishly or cruelly, the bridge narrows to a blade's edge, and you fall screaming into the abyss. Historians still debate whether the bridge was metaphorical, mythic, or just an ancient traffic warning. You blink, and for a moment, it's like you see that bridge reflected in the fire. A thin path stretching into darkness, widening, narrowing, depending on you. A breeze gusts through the open temple wall. It's not strong, but it carries sand with it, and suddenly everyone shields their faces. Even the flame flinches, dimming just a bit. You feel it, not fear. Exactly, but disruption. A reminder that the lie is always out there, always testing. One elder reaches for a bundle of dried herbs, probably haoma, a sacred plant once used in rituals now mostly symbolic. He tosses a small piece into the flame. It flares, then settles. The chanting resumes. The circle re-establishes itself. Truth, once again, has the upper hand. You shift your weight, your back twinges, your eyes feel dry, but there's a peace here. A structure that most modern lives have abandoned. Everything you do matters, not in a crushing, Instagram influencer way, but in a quiet, sacred one. Even sweeping your floor is part of the battle against chaos. And yes, that includes your emotional floor. 2. You glance around. There are no statues, no icons, just people, a fire, and a shared silence when the chanting ends. That's enough. As you stand to leave, one of the elders hands you a smooth stone. It's been scorched on one side, blackened by fire, but the other side is still pale, almost gleaming. No words, just the stone. You nod, tuck it into your tunic, and step out into the night. You get the message, and just as your mind begins to dwell on all this cosmic pressure, you hear the bleating of a goat from the next field. Ridiculous and jarring. You smile. Even in a world divided by light and shadow, someone still has to feed the livestock. You follow the sound, and as you do, the stars overhead multiply. The road winds lower, toward an older place, a city where death is dealt with in a way both deeply rational and absolutely spine-chilling. The road snakes downward, its curves traced into the hillside like the lazy thoughts of an old god. You pass low stone walls covered in dry moss, and the occasional skeleton of a bush that clearly gave up trying a few seasons ago. Everything feels brittle, air, ground, even your knees, which now audibly crack every time you shift direction. Your destination looms in the distance, a round stone tower, perched like a watchful eye on the ridge above a sleepy village. It's not a fortress, not a temple, though from afar, it could pass for either. It's a dogma, a tower of silence, and despite the soothing name, it's built for the dead. As you climb, a breeze stirs up dust and faint, sour odors that cling to your nostrils. You instinctively breathe through your mouth, which of course only makes it worse. The scent isn't decay exactly, more like sun-cured leather that's been left too long near a fire. It smells resigned. Near the tower, the path widens, and you stop beside a sun-bleached sign etched with curling Avestan script. You can't read it, but you know what it means. Only the righteous may approach. You look down at your dust-covered robes, your calloused hands, and the sweat that won't stop collecting at your lower back. No one stops you, though. There's no gate, no guards, just silence and wind. The Zoroastrians believed that dead bodies were dangerous, not spiritually, like ghosts or curses, but physically and cosmically. A corpse was considered deeply impure. Once life left the body, it became a vessel of drudge, of decay and untruth. Burying it, that would pollute the sacred earth. Burning it, a violation of fire's purity. Even water couldn't be trusted to carry death without consequence. So, what do you do when all the elements are off limits? You let the vultures handle it. You step onto the platform at the top of the dogma. It's round, maybe 50 feet across, with a low rim around the edge like an oversized stone birdbath. The center is sunken, a circular pit stained a permanent, dusty gray. Around the edge, there are grooves, places where bodies once lay side by side, exposed to the open sky. You shiver, not from cold, but from the raw, eerie logic of it. Sky burial. Leave the dead to be picked clean by birds. No mess, no earth pollution, just bones and sun. Practical, efficient, and somehow beautiful? Historians still debate whether this ritual began purely out of environmental necessity or as a theological solution to impurity. It's likely both. Some suggest earlier Indo-Iranian tribes buried their dead, and the shift came later with Zoroaster's teachings. Others argue the towers were a later development, introduced only when population density made earth burial too risky. Either way, the result is unforgettable. You look around. There are no fresh bodies now. Modern Zoroastrians in Iran haven't used the towers in decades. Partly due to legal restrictions and partly due to, well, urban sprawl. Hard to let vultures do their work when the city builds a shopping mall next door. Still, you can almost hear them, the flap of wings, the impatient shriek of a bearded vulture circling above, waiting for the priests to finish their prayers. You picture the corpse bearers, the Nasu Salars, lifting the body on an iron bier, silent and solemn, their mouths covered with cloth to prevent contamination. You've got to admit, the ancient world had some serious commitment to hygiene, while other cultures were building catacombs and embalming corpses with questionable spices. The Zoroastrians were like, let's just get this over with in the most ecologically neutral way possible. You shift your stance, and your foot kicks a small rock that tumbles into the central pit. It lands with a soft thud, no echo, just dust. You wonder how many generations have stood exactly where you are now. Saying goodbye without touching, honoring without embalming. One quirky detail pops into your mind. Something from an obscure 19th century traveler's account. In some isolated communities, families would keep the bones of their loved ones until enough had died to make a funeral trip to the tower worthwhile. It's unclear whether this was common practice or a product of miscommunication. But the image of a family politely waiting for a group burial is, well, deeply human. You squat near the rim and trace a finger along the stone. It's warm from the sun, but pitted, scarred from centuries of weather and ritual. You feel the ghosts here, but not in a spooky haunted house way. More like a museum after dark. Quiet, watchful, the kind of place where the dead don't linger, they just observe. Your legs ache, so you stand, stretch, groan. That same scratchy tunic sticks to your lower back like it's developed a crush on your spine. The wind shifts, and you smell juniper. Someone must be burning it in the village below. A ritual cleansing, maybe. You breathe it in deeply, grateful for something clean. And then, without warning, the silence breaks. A low horn, far off, Probably from the edge of the village. You can't see the source. But it's the sound of something beginning. Or maybe something ending. You descend slowly, careful not to slip. The gravel here is treacherous, tiny traders waiting to slide you right off the path. Your toes dig in, gripping through your sandals. The tower fades behind you. But the memory lingers. The image of bones bleached white under an indifferent sun. Of fire that is not allowed to touch flesh. Of death made almost efficient. And just as you reach the lower trail, the wind brings with it a new scent, horse sweat, dust, and the tang of crushed mint leaves. A reminder that you're entering a new world now. One with movement, infrastructure, maybe even bureaucracy. Because while the dead rest on their towers, the living still have places to be, messages to send, and roads to walk that stretch farther than most people ever dreamed possible. You follow the road now, not a dirt track or a deer path, but a true road, wide enough for 2 carts to pass without grazing, flat enough to walk blindfolded. It stretches forward like a deliberate line drawn across the chaos of the landscape. You run your fingers along the stone edging, smooth in places where sandals and hooves have polished it for centuries. This is no mere shortcut between villages. This is the Royal Road, built under the Achaemenid Empire. This road once connected Susa to Sardis, over 1.600 miles. It wasn't just for marching armies or hauling taxes. This was Persia's artery, its humming lifeline. You feel the intention in every mile. It's not for wandering, it's for getting somewhere. Your legs appreciate the change. The road absorbs your footfalls like a soft drum. No sharp stones to stab your soles. For once, your knees don't ache with every step. But your shoulders? They're a different story. The imaginary courier bag slung across your back is getting heavier with each mile. And the sun's back again, baking your tunic into your spine like it's trying to brand you. You pass a rest station, an ancient chapar khane, or relay post, a crumbling stone weighhouse with a shaded portico and a stone basin that once held water. Now dry and spider-webbed, you sit under the ledge, grateful for the break. Your thighs hum with exhaustion, and your mouth tastes like sand in regret. You imagine being one of the empire's mounted couriers. A royal chapar, changing horses every 15 miles, riding for days without pause. Herodotus once claimed these men could deliver a message across the empire faster than most people could cook a decent lentil stew. Historians still debate how fast those couriers really were. Some argue they averaged 150 miles a day. Others say that's poetic exaggeration. But even the skeptics admit the Persians had one of the most efficient pre-modern communication systems ever imagined. And here you are, just trying to finish a walk before sundown. You stretch your legs and notice something odd. Etched into the stone wall of the way station is a small symbol. A winged disc with a human figure emerging from it. You recognize it. That's Faravahar, one of the most enduring symbols of Zoroastrian faith. It's not mentioned in the original texts, but it shows up in art everywhere, on seals, on temples, on rings. No one agrees exactly what it represents. Some say it's the human soul. Others, divine protection. A few fringe scholars argue it might have started as a royal emblem and only later became spiritual. Whatever it meant, it watched, like the flame, the road, the stars. This world is full of eyes. You move on, past hillsides dotted with goats chewing on thorn bushes, shepherds calling out in sing-song tones, and a group of children pretending a flat rock is a throne. You smile at that. Some things never change. Empires rise, beliefs evolve, but kids will always invent kingdoms from pebbles. You come to a bridge, another Achaemenid marvel. Its stones arranged so precisely they've held for over 2 millennia with nothing more than gravity and intention. You cross it slowly, marveling at the water below. It's one of the few clean rivers you've seen in days, cutting through the earth like a silver thread. On the other side, a small monument stands, A weathered pillar inscribed in cuneiform, Elamite, and Aramaic. You squint at the carvings. Then laugh softly to yourself. This was Darius the Great's idea. Carve your accomplishments in every major language. Just to make sure someone understands how amazing you were. A royal brag in triplicate. You rest your hand on the pillar. The stone warm and vibrating faintly. Or maybe that's just your pulse. You wonder how many others stopped here. Soldiers? Merchants? Diplomats? Spies? The road carried them all. It was neutral, indifferent, and yet, it gave structure to the empire. A ribbon tying together 1,000 cultures into something that, on its best days, worked. One quirky fact you recall, some way stations supposedly offered food. Not just dry bread, but stews, cheese, even dates soaked in wine. Can't confirm if that's real or just romanticized travel lore. But you'd trade your left sandal for a bowl of something warm right about now. You walk on, and just as you start to tire again, the landscape changes. Trees appear, rows of them. Symmetrical, orderly, with water channels running between. At first, you think you're hallucinating. Then you hear it, the faint trickle of flowing water, the soft buzz of bees, and the scent of something miraculous, green. You've reached a Persian garden. Not just a patch of shade. A Shahar bog, the ancient blueprint of paradise itself. 4 quadrants. Water running like veins through the center. It's not wild nature. It's curated calm. A message to the universe. We may live in dust and heat, but we remember what peace feels like. And just as your body begins to relax into this rare moment of symmetry, your mind turns to someone who once dreamed an entire empire could be governed not by fear, but by order, not by force, but by example. A king who understood roads, gardens, and graves better than most. His name was Cyrus, and his tomb waits in quiet marble, not far from where your feet now stand. The air is cooler now, filtered through willow trees that arch like bowing courtiers over a narrow stream. Your sandals leave soft impressions in the grass-lined path, a rare luxury after so many days of sun-cracked earth. And just ahead, resting beneath an enormous sky smeared with lavender dusk, lies something strangely modest for a man who once ruled from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River. Cyrus the Great's tomb. You expect grandeur, columns, statues, something to announce that the bones inside belong to one of history's most successful conquerors. Instead, you get a squat, stepped monument of pale stone. 7 tiers lead to a small chamber with a single dark entrance. It looks more like a shepherd's hut built by a perfectionist than the resting place of an emperor. But the simplicity is the point. Cyrus was buried at Pasargadae, in what was once the heart of his empire. But the tomb doesn't flaunt. It endures. Like the road, like the fire. No gold, no marble, just symmetry, silence, and stone so precisely cut you'd swear it grew that way. You walk up the steps slowly, your thighs barking complaints, your breath thin from the slight incline. There's no one around, just you, a few drowsy birds, and the dry rasp of the breeze. You pause at the entrance. Peering inside, you see a single stone slab. No carvings, no offerings, just the room, still and dark, like time has been folded in on itself. According to ancient sources, there was once an inscription here. "O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you will come. I am Cyrus, who founded the empire of the Persians. Do not begrudge me this bit of earth that covers my body." That's the version from Arrian. Anyway, historians still argue whether the quote is authentic, or literary flourish retrofitted by later admirers. But it fits the mood. You sit on the top step, watching the sun ease down behind the hills, painting everything in peach and rose. Cyrus wasn't just a conqueror. He was a reformer, a rare figure in ancient history remembered for his mercy. When he took Babylon in 539 BCE, he didn't burn it, He didn't slaughter priests or parade captives in chains. Instead, he freed enslaved people, including the Jews, and funded the rebuilding of their temple in Jerusalem. That's not legend, it's carved into the Cyrus cylinder, a cuneiform document some call the world's first declaration of human rights. Though scholars debate just how modern its message really is. Your fingers trace a line in the stone beside you, following grooves carved by wind, not human hands. There's a kind of humility here that hits you sideways. For a man who commanded armies across 3 continents, Cyrus asked for almost nothing in return. No colossal statues, no cult, just a clean, simple tomb and a request for respect. You close your eyes and imagine the funeral. The road lined with mourners, priests whispering gathas, soldiers standing silent in rows, and perhaps some unnamed builder, smoothing the final stone into place, sealing away the body of a man who tried to make empire something less monstrous. You take a deep breath. The air smells faintly of time, maybe crushed underfoot by a bird or some wandering goat. It's the kind of scent that seems to carry memories in it, like forgotten letters folded into a pocket. And here comes the quirky detail. One medieval traveler claimed that Alexander the Great visited this tomb and wept. Supposedly, he ordered repairs to be made after finding it in disrepair, scolding his own men for their negligence. Whether that happened or not, it tells you something about how Cyrus's reputation lingered through wars, through dynasties, through men who could never quite measure up. You stand and walk a slow circle around the tomb. It casts a long shadow now, reaching out like an old hand toward the ruins of Pasargadae in the distance, pillars, foundations, broken walls, a faint skeleton of glory. The kind of silence that lets you hear your own heartbeat in your feet. And just as you're about to turn away, the wind picks up again. And with it, dust. Not a lot, just enough to sting your eyes and make you blink. When your vision clears, you see a caravan far off, camels and riders making their slow way across the horizon. Maybe merchants, maybe soldiers, maybe messengers on the royal road. The empire still moves, even if its founder rests. You follow the path back down the steps, your hand trailing the stone as you go. There's something deeply human in this spot, not just ancient, not just sacred, but familiar. A man builds a nation. A man dies. A stone remembers. And just as the last light fades, you spot another glow on the distant hills. Not fire, not stars. Something shimmering, something gilded. Because while Cyrus rested in modesty, his successors had other ideas, grander, heavier, and far more complicated. One of them wore robes so thick with embroidery they bent the air around him. And his throne? Well, let's just say your shoulders ache just thinking about it. The glow grows larger with each step. Not the warm flicker of a fire temple, but the theatrical shimmer of wealth trying to impress the sky. You crest a hill and pause, your knees grateful for the break, and there it is. A vision from the golden age of kings who wanted not just to rule, but to be seen ruling. Welcome to the court of Xerxes. What remains today are fractured columns and stone slabs littered across the plain like toppled gods. But in your mind, it reassembles itself, slowly, ornately. You step into the ancient city of Persepolis, rebuilt by imagination. Sand becomes polished stone. The toppled statues rise, and the shadows of long-dead courtiers stretch across the mosaic floors. Everything gleams. You approach the great stairway, each step wide and shallow, designed not to trip up the robed elite. Even your tired feet appreciate the careful engineering. As you ascend, you pass a long procession carved into the wall, Medes and Elamites, Lydians and Bactrians, all bearing gifts, textiles, animals, vessels, maybe a little bribe tucked discreetly into a sleeve. They bring tribute to a king who barely needed to ask. This isn't just architecture, it's choreography. The palace was built to overwhelm, to make visitors feel small and grateful to be in the presence of royal divinity. And at the center of this performance was Xerxes, son of Darius, master of ceremonies for the ancient world's greatest political theater. You enter the audience hall in your mind. Tall columns stretch like trees in a forest designed by mathematicians. Banners flutter. Incense drifts. Xerxes sits on a high throne, his face carved in stone with a beard too perfect to be grown naturally. And he watches you, not unkindly, but certainly expectantly. You shift your weight. The scratchy tunic again. You imagine how your shoulders would feel beneath those ceremonial robes, layers of silk, gold thread, embroidery so heavy it turns your body into furniture. Your neck would ache from the weight of your own status. Xerxes wasn't Cyrus. He wasn't a humble reformer. He was born to power. And he carried it like a loaded platter. When he invaded Greece in 480 BCE, he didn't just bring soldiers. He brought artists, engineers, cooks, scribes, and probably someone to hold his umbrella. Herodotus says his army drank rivers dry and built pontoon bridges across the Hellespont using boats and ambition. Historians still debate the size of that army. Some say hundreds of thousands. Others argue it was far smaller but inflated by storytellers eager for drama. Either way, it wasn't subtle, and neither was Xerxes. He wanted the world to know he was coming. But empire is heavy, and thrones can turn into cages. You walk the palace ruins now, feeling the grandeur press against your ribs. Not physically, it's not that kind of place anymore. But psychologically, you imagine the pressure of ruling when every whisper could be treason. When every banquet guest might be balancing loyalty with ambition. When your own reflection could start to feel like a stranger in a mirror of polished bronze. One fringe theory about Xerxes suggests he suffered from what modern minds might call royal isolation syndrome, surrounded by luxury, but starved of trust. No therapist, no safe space, just advisors nodding too quickly and guards who slept with one eye open. You crouch beside a fallen slab carved with cuneiform script, royal proclamations in 3 languages again. Because heaven forbid someone miss the point. One reads something like, I am Xerxes, great king, king of kings, king of lands far and wide. You get the idea. There's confidence. And then there's Xerxes. But even he couldn't outrun the problem that all-powerful men eventually face. Time. You stand, brushing dust from your hands. Your thighs ache again. The wind picks up, lifting the scent of sun-warmed stone and distant pine resin. You imagine the last days of Persepolis as it once was. Banquets echoing off high walls. Peacocks strutting near fountains. Eunuchs carrying scrolls from room to room. Everything meticulously ordered. Everything temporary. Because eventually, the fire came. But not yet. For now, the palace stands. You're still here. Beneath the imagined columns. Walking the mosaic floors like a ghost granted permission to revisit. A guest in a place where decisions once reshaped continents. You follow a path lined with toppled griffins and crushed tiles. Stepping past faded reminders that even kings are renters in the house of time. You pass through the imagined shadows of courtiers. Feeling their eyes on your back. Their perfume curling in the air like memory. And then, movement. A veil lifts. Literally, you glimpse a figure behind a screen of woven silk. Watching the proceedings with interest and calculation. Not a servant, not a decoration. Someone with power, but from the shadows. Because if you thought Xerxes was the only ruler in the room, you're in for a surprise. The corridor narrows, flanked by high stone walls and wooden latticework that filters the late sunlight into thin gold ribbons. Your sandals echo softly against the polished floor. But the silence ahead isn't empty, it's layered. Charged. The kind of hush that clings to secrets. You pass beneath a delicate arch and pause. There's the whisper of fabric brushing tile. The faintest scent of rose oil. And then, eyes. A woman watches you. She stands behind a gauzy curtain. backlit by amber light, her silhouette framed like a painting. You can't see her features. But you know. This is no passive presence. This is a royal woman of the Achaemenid court. A strategist behind silk. A diplomat in jewelry. The ancient Persian world, like so many others, was built by men and often narrated by them, too. But behind the embroidered veils and private gardens, women of power moved with the precision of generals. Xerxes may have ruled from the throne, but women like Amestris, his queen, ruled from behind it. Historians still argue whether Amestris was a cruel manipulator or simply a powerful woman in a brutal world. Herodotus, never one to shy away from gossip, painted her as vicious, but modern scholars think that may have been more political slander than fact. After all, powerful women have a way of drawing unfair headlines, even in the 5th century BCE. You walk past the curtain slowly, respectfully, and though the fabric muffles her presence, you can feel her still watching, calculating, not judging, measuring. The palace may belong to the king, but the rhythm of life here pulses through the women's quarters. You step into a shaded courtyard. It's quieter here, cooler. A trickling fountain whispers to itself in the center, its basin lined with lilies and fallen pomegranate blossoms. The scent of cardamom and saffron hangs in the air like a memory. And lounging beneath the ivy-draped colonnade are more figures, women reclining on cushions, laughing softly, plucking at stringed instruments while servants fan the heat away with palm leaves. But this is not some passive harem. It's a council. You sense it in the way one of them leans in to murmur a suggestion. In the ledgers piled neatly in the corner, records of shipments, inventories, alliances. These women are not idle. They are nodes in a network, managing estates, arranging marriages, keeping peace within the palace, and occasionally, orchestrating entire political shifts. One fringe theory claims that royal Persian women had their own income streams, often from land they controlled outright. Some even ran their own workshops. In Persepolis, tablets have been found listing rations paid to female managers, suggesting a level of administrative power we don't often associate with ancient queens. Not every veiled woman was just a decoration. Some were CFOs in gold-trimmed sandals. You sit briefly beneath a fig tree. Your legs throb. Your lower back sings a little song of protest. But you don't mind. There's something calming about this space. The pace here isn't dictated by horns or battle cries, but by routines. Gardens watered at dawn. Scrolls unrolled after tea. Silk robes folded in the quiet hours. You imagine a young princess being raised here, taught not just how to pour wine with grace, but how to read treaties, understand regional politics, calculate dowries, and listen, really listen, to the murmurs of court ambition. And all the while, she would walk behind veils, speak with care, and move pieces others didn't even realize were on the board. And yet, she'd also bleed, laugh, grieve. One little-known tablet from the treasury records a royal nurse requesting extra oil and linens during a difficult birthing season. Even in a palace of marble and gold, life still hurts. You rise, rubbing your aching calves, and follow a servant down a shaded corridor. He leads you to a small chamber with open windows and a view of the royal gardens beyond. There's a breeze, faint but steady. It smells of myrrh and fresh mint. You're handed a cup, something warm, herbal, soothing. You sip. It tastes like quiet confidence. There are no thrones in this room. Just low seats, scroll racks, and an atmosphere of subtle control. You realize something. This empire was built not just on fire temples and royal roads, but on soft voices behind curtains. On whispered advice offered between sips of tea. On decisions made in rooms like this, where no historians ever wrote their names. You exit quietly, your tunic brushing the silk-draped doorway. The sound barely registers, but you feel it. The slight lift of the curtain behind you. Another glance, another calculation, And just as you begin to think you understand how this empire worked, you hear a sound that doesn't belong here at all. A piercing cry, not human, almost musical. You follow it instinctively, passing courtyards and corridors until you reach an open terrace. And there, on a carved railing, sits a peacock. Its feathers shimmer like oil in the sun, blues and greens shifting with every breeze. It stares at you, unblinking, like it knows something you don't. Because now you're heading into a different part of the empire, not the thrones or the tombs, but the offices, the paperwork, the peacocks and bureaucrats who actually kept the whole thing from falling apart. The peacock lets out another cry, half trumpet, half shriek, then flutters away, leaving behind a swirl of dust and a single fallen feather. You reach for it instinctively, brushing the iridescent barbs with your fingers. It's soft, too soft for a world made of stone and fire. And yet, here it is, beautiful, impractical, undeniably present. You tuck the feather behind your ear. Why not? No one's judging. Well, probably someone is, but they're behind a lattice screen and too polite to say so. The terrace opens onto another hall, this one humming with quieter energy. No chanting, no grand architecture, just the sound of styluses scratching clay. Welcome to the bureaucratic belly of the empire. You've entered the world of scribes. Rows of low desks line the chamber. Some are covered in papyrus scrolls, others in clay tablets still drying in wooden racks. The air smells faintly of dust, ink, and something like boiled barley. You hear the soft shush of sandals as young assistants ferry tablets from one scribe to another, each marked with strange little wedge-shaped impressions, cuneiform, the lingua franca of imperial administration. And seated at the far end of the room, in a robe too fine for someone surrounded by pigeon droppings and wax seals, is a man who absolutely radiates middle management. He doesn't look up as you approach, just gestures to an empty stool with a lazy flick of his stylus. You sit, your knees creak, your back sighs. You place your palms on the cool wood and wait. He finally looks at you. One eyebrow lifts. You get the message. Well, what do you want? You try to explain. You're just a traveler, curious, passing through. He grunts and returns to his tablet. But a few moments later, he starts talking anyway. Not to you exactly, more like near you. The way someone who's been doing the same job for 20 years might talk to the furniture. This one, he says, tapping the edge of the clay, is a ration list. 3 sheep to the temple workers, 10 measures of wheat to the firekeepers, half a jar of oil to the queen's cousin's second wife. He sighs. She always asks for oil. You nod, like you understand. You don't, really, but you're getting the vibe. This is the unglamorous machinery of empire. Not the battles, not the banners, but the daily drudgery of keeping everyone fed, paid, and not stabbing each other out of boredom. And yet, there's something beautiful here. The handwriting, the tiny order in each careful impression, a quiet pride in process. You glance down at the tablet nearest you. It's dated, signed, stamped with a cylinder seal that leaves an elegant animal impression, maybe a lion, maybe a goat. Historians still debate what some of the symbols actually meant. Were they family crests? Religious markers? Department logos? No one's sure. But they're everywhere, like ancient emojis carved in clay. One tablet lists complaints. A shipment of figs that arrived half rotten. A camel gone missing. A priest arguing about land use near a sacred spring. You smile. Bureaucracy, it turns out, is eternal. And here's a quirky fact. Some tablets include personal notes between scribes. Little jokes, or warnings, or, once, an angry message about someone taking the wrong stylus. It's like finding a post-it on a tax return that says, "Tell Nabu to stop eating my dates." You wander to the next room. Scrolls this time. Aramaic script flows across parchment like a quiet river. These are royal correspondences, treaties, Perhaps even spy reports. The scribe here is younger, cleaner, clearly nervous. He offers you a cup of diluted wine, and you take it gratefully. It tastes like raisins soaked in rainwater. Not terrible. He tells you about the postal system. How couriers ride the royal road with satchels of messages. Switching horses at stations. How signals are sent with smoke or mirrors from high towers when needed. The empire doesn't just march. It communicates. Fast. Often. Relentlessly. You take another sip. The wine relaxes your throat. But not your brain. You're starting to feel the enormity of this machine. It's not glamorous. But it works. Orders flow from palaces to provinces. Taxes come back in wheat, cattle, silver, and behind it all, hundreds of men and women hunched over tablets, calculating the fate of nations one sheep at a time. Outside, you hear another peacock cry. It sounds impatient. You smile. The bird is part of the system too. Raised in royal gardens, pampered and painted in myth. Some even say they were sacred. Symbols of immortality, but you suspect they're just there for color and occasional drama. You step into a side corridor and find yourself surrounded by storage jars. Tall ones, sealed with wax, labeled in 4 languages. One's labeled, honey. You consider breaking it open. Your stomach grumbles, but you refrain. You suspect a scribe somewhere has already logged your visit. As you turn to leave, the sun slants through a clerestory window, illuminating a small inscription on the wall. It reads something like, "In remembering, we rule." A motto? A reminder? No one knows who carved it. But it sticks with you. Because while kings sit on thrones and priests tend their flames, it's the record keepers who remember. And in memory, there is power. You exit the archive quietly, the feather still behind your ear. Your mind buzzing with grain shipments and forged seals. And just as you start to feel like maybe administration is sacred in its own way, you step out into the afternoon sun, blinking, stretching, aching, and spot a group of robed figures moving toward the fire temple. But these aren't just any priests. They're the Magi, and they've already seen you. They approach like wind, deliberate and silent, robes billowing with each slow step, eyes steady, unreadable. The Magi. You've heard whispers about them from nearly every corner of the empire. Firekeepers, lawgivers, interpreters of dreams and omens. And maybe, depending on who's talking, secretive manipulators with ears closer to the king than his own family. You stand still, hands loosely at your sides, trying not to look like someone who just wandered out of a bureaucratic office with a stolen peacock feather behind their ear. One of the Magi stops directly in front of you. His gaze doesn't pierce, it envelops, as if he's reading not your face, but the spaces between your thoughts. Without a word, he gestures toward the temple. You follow. The temple is nothing like the grand halls of Persepolis. It's older, simpler, made of dark stone, low to the ground, with an inner chamber lit only by the sacred flame. The air shifts as you enter, warm, spiced with sandalwood and something earthy. You feel the difference not just in temperature, but in vibration. This place hums, not audibly, but in your ribs, in your breath. Inside, the fire flickers low, as if waiting. A magus stands beside it, motionless, hands folded. He doesn't look at you, but you know he knows you're here. One of them begins to chant, not words, but a single low tone. It reverberates against the walls, curling up the dome like smoke. Another joins in, then another. No instruments, just voice layered over voice, until the air itself feels thick with sound. You exhale slowly, aware of your heartbeat, aware of your every breath. This, you realize, is the real power. Not gold, not thrones, but ritual, performed exactly, passed down flawlessly, repeated not because people forgot why, but because they remembered too well. You sit cross-legged near the wall. The stone is cool against your knees. You're close enough to the flame now to feel its warmth, comforting. But also a little too intense. Like a truth you're not quite ready to hear. The Magi move slowly, deliberately. One adds a small twig bundle to the fire. Another draws a circle in the ash. Nothing is wasted. Every motion is charged. You wonder if they ever slip up. If they ever drop something or sneeze at the wrong time. You hope so. Otherwise, it's like watching statues pray. One fringe theory, mostly from modern scholars who specialize in the fringes, suggests that the Magi weren't just priests, but early scientists of the sacred, masters of astronomy, herbology, and even proto-chemistry. Some even believe they developed techniques of memory so advanced that they could recall entire books, word for word, passed down orally for generations. A fire temple, then, wasn't just a house of worship. It was a living archive. You look around. There are no scrolls here. No tablets. But knowledge pulses in the room like heat. And here's something else. The Magi don't just preserve purity, they enforce it. Socially, spiritually, legally, they determine what's clean, what's defiled, who can approach the flame, and who must remain outside. Some temples even kept dogs as spiritual assistants, because in Zoroastrian tradition, dogs have an uncanny sensitivity to nasu, the corruption of death. Historians still argue whether the Magi had judicial power or merely religious influence. But from what you're seeing now, the line was thin, very thin. The flame doesn't just symbolize truth. It knows if you've lied. You shift slightly. The stone under your thighs is now warm from your body. You wonder what the Magi make of you, a visitor. Dusty, clearly not trained, clearly not initiated, yet still allowed in, maybe tolerated, maybe studied. Suddenly, one of them turns to you. His face is calm, unreadable, but his eyes are sharp. He reaches into a pouch at his waist and withdraws something small and wrapped in linen. He holds it out to you. You hesitate, then accept. It's light, warm. When you unwrap the cloth, you find a small stone, a fragment of glazed tile. Once blue, now faded to ash gray. Carved into its surface is a symbol, 3 curves spiraling outward from a single point. You don't know what it means, but it feels old, heavy with silence. You nod in thanks. The magus simply turns away. The chanting quiets. The fire steadies. For a moment, you feel as if the entire building exhales. Then, slowly, the Magi begin to exit. One by one, they slip into the shadows beyond the curtain, until only you and the flame remain. You stay a moment longer, listening to the fire pop and crackle, watching the embers pulse like breath. The room has gone still again, but the silence feels different now. Less empty, more filled. You wrap the stone tile in its cloth and slip it into your tunic. And just as you rise to your feet, your knees complaining like old servants, you hear another sound, faint, distant, but growing, not chanting, not footsteps. A bell, a signal from a neighboring fire temple. Perhaps, or maybe something worse, because while the flame endures, the empire around it is beginning to flicker. You follow the sound of the bell, its slow toll reverberating through the hills like a pulse the earth is trying to steady. Each clang stretches across the sky, pulling shadows behind it. You descend from the temple, passing through narrow lanes where incense still curls from rooftops and chickens skitter away from your dust-caked sandals. And then, through a break in the trees, you see it. A fire temple, much like the one you just left. But the flame is gone. Only smoke rises from its heart. And not the good kind. This isn't sacred smoke. This is the aftermath of chaos. You quicken your pace, calves burning, feet dragging. When you arrive, the scene is strangely still. The walls are blackened. The roof has caved in. And standing in the middle, silent, motionless, is a lone priest. His robe is scorched. His hands are covered in ash. He doesn't look at you. He stares into the hearth, where the fire used to live. This is no ordinary accident. Word spreads fast in an empire built on roads and memory. Whispers are already gathering. Foreign hands. Traitors within. Omens. Some believe the fire simply died from neglect. Others insist it was extinguished by enemies who had no place in this world. Historians still argue whether temple fires were ever attacked during military campaigns, or whether this kind of desecration was internal sabotage. What's clear is that this wasn't just a fire. It was a boundary, and someone crossed it. You sit on a low wall, careful not to touch the ash. The smoke smells not just of wood, but of ending, a reminder that even eternal flames need tending. And still, beyond the physical ruin, the ritual must go on. The priest bends, gathers fresh wood, and begins the process again. Not with ceremony, just muscle memory. Like someone trying to restart a heart. He strikes flint. Once. Twice. Nothing. Again. You hear the flint hit stone. Again and again. Until finally, the spark catches. A thin lick of flame emerges. Struggling, the priest shields it with his body, whispering to it like a child on the edge of sleep. You watch, motionless, and then you notice something odd. A strange chill on the back of your neck. Not cold exactly, but a pull. You turn, slowly, and there, cresting the far hill, is a banner. Foreign, tall, edged with bronze. Behind it, marchers. Not Persians. You stand. The ash on the ground suddenly feels like a warning. Alexander. Not yet a conqueror. Not yet the great. But already a force like a storm rolling over stone. You don't see him. Not directly. But the rumors move faster than horses. Macedonian helmets glittering like fish scales. Greek fire that burns even in water. Libraries emptied. Temples looted. You hear the priest behind you whisper one word. Persepolis. And now you understand. This isn't just any ruined temple. It's a sign. And here comes the irony. Alexander admired Cyrus. Supposedly visited his tomb. Wept at its neglect. Ordered repairs. Maybe even prayed. But admiration doesn't equal restraint. You begin walking fast. Away from the smoke. Past startled goats. Through scattered trees. The wind smells like scorched parchment now. You pass a group of villagers huddled in silence. One clutches a jar of seeds. Another holds a birdcage with no bird inside. You crest a ridge, and there it is, Persepolis. Once dazzling with banners and polished columns. Now, faint screams echo across the valley. Smoke chokes the sky. Scrolls burn. Their words curling into smoke like forgotten prayers. Statues split. Bronze melts. Gold is pried from walls. It wasn't strategic. It wasn't even particularly necessary. According to ancient sources, Alexander burned Persepolis during a drunken celebration. Or maybe it was calculated revenge for the Persian sacking of Athens a century before. Scholars still debate his motives, impulse, or political theater. Either way, the result was the same, fire. And not the sacred kind. You weave through chaos. The scent of smoke clings to your throat like guilt. You pass toppled columns that once held the heavens. Marble stairs now blackened. Mosaics shattered like lies exposed. And yet, you find something strange in the rubble. Amid the ashes of the library, a fragment of a tablet. Clay, inscribed, half burned, but still legible. You can't read the script, but you recognize the seal. A lion with wings. Memory. Surviving fire. You tuck it into your tunic. It's heavy, maybe symbolically, maybe literally. You step away, heart pounding. The wind howls through what's left of the audience hall, as if the building itself is mourning. You walk until your legs tremble. Past the ruins, past the smoke, past the parts of yourself that now feel singed. And just as you think you've escaped the flames, you hear something behind you, not screams, not shouts, hooves, a horse, galloping, but not at you. You turn and catch the briefest glimpse, a rider twisting sideways. loosing an arrow behind him while his mount speeds forward. That was no Greek. That was something else. And so you head east now, away from Empire and toward the edges, where different rules apply. The road east bends like a question mark, and you follow it with dust-caked calves and a head still ringing with the echo of crackling libraries. The land here flattens, then suddenly rolls again, as if the earth can't quite make up its mind. The cities thin out, the temples become less polished, and the people? They move differently, swifter, more sideways, because this is Parthian country now. And just in time, too, because your thighs are still recovering from Persepolis. The idea of sitting, really sitting, on a horse? It sounds like paradise. Until, of course, you actually try it. You reach a dusty settlement with low-walled houses and curious eyes peeking through cloth-draped windows. There's a stable at the edge, where a group of men in sleeveless tunics tend to muscular, broad-chested horses. These aren't your average shaggy pack animals. They're warhorses, lean, proud, and capable of navigating desert terrain like dancers. You're invited to ride one. The saddle's minimal, the reins feel optional, and the man helping you up gives you a smile that says, "You're going to regret this." He's right. You swing your leg over the beast, and within moments you understand. This horse has no intention of going where you want. It's trained to move laterally, dodge arrows, and twist mid-sprint. It doesn't plod. It pivots. You jolt forward as the animal breaks into a trot that feels like you're being flung from a catapult, sideways. The ground blurs. Your spine screams. Your stomach considers revolt. But somewhere in the nausea, you realize, this is how the Parthians beat Rome. Their signature move? The Parthian shot. A feinting retreat while turning in the saddle to fire arrows behind them, perfectly aimed. Perfectly timed. It's not just a trick. It's an art. A threat you can't chase down. Historians still marvel at how a loosely organized, tribal confederation like the Parthians could withstand the Roman war machine. But here's the secret. They didn't build empires to defend. They rode them. And they were good at waiting. At harassing. At never quite letting you win. You reach a plateau. The wind slicing across your face like a whetstone. The rider beside you grins and signals a stop. You dismount, badly, and crumple to the ground. Your thighs buzz. Your knees throb. You've discovered new muscles simply by damaging them. The others light a small fire. No ceremony. No chanting. Just warmth, food, and war stories told in low voices. You understand maybe half of it. But the gist is clear. Speed, surprise, and silence. They don't hold cities. They drain them. They don't fortify temples. They vanish before you even light the torch. And yet, there's a culture here. Not just survival tactics. Real rituals. Fine metalwork. Silk traded for saffron. Horses brushed until their coats gleam like river stones. These people weren't just fighters. They were merchants. Negotiators. Philosophers with dirt under their fingernails. One sullen archer hands you a carved token. It's bone, smoothed and inscribed with a pattern of dots. A gaming piece? A talisman? Scholars debate whether Parthian symbols carried numerical value or mystical meaning. But to you, it feels like a gift. You slip it into your tunic beside the charred tablet and the wrapped tile from the Magi. You're building a museum inside your robes. That night, you sleep under a sky so clear it feels fake. Stars pile on top of stars. Your breath rises in small clouds. Your back is sore from riding. Your shoulders from bracing. But your dreams are fast, twisting, looping, flaring out in strange directions. Maybe your body's still in motion even as you sleep. And in those dreams, you see something new. Not dusty ruins. Not fire temples. But silk. Bright. Luxurious. Whispering across polished marble like wind through reeds. Because beyond these riders, another world waits. A dynasty born from ashes. Draped in gold. And obsessed with image. You wake at dawn to find the partyans already gone. No goodbyes, no notes, just hoofprints and the lingering scent of cooked lentils. You rub the sleep from your eyes, stretch until your joints protest, and begin walking again, toward a new power, toward the Sassanids. The landscape changes again, slowly, subtly, like a song that shifts key without warning. The earth feels firmer underfoot, the winds sharper, the skies somehow higher. Columns begin to reappear, not broken but standing, proud and symmetrical. Road markers rise from the dust, carved with fresher hands. And the people? They stand taller, wear their hair differently, walk with an air that says, "We're back in control. Welcome to the Sassanid Empire." You first catch a glimpse of it in a city nestled between two rocky outcrops. Not sprawling like Persepolis, but deliberate, clean lines, grand gates. You pass under an arch etched with fierce reliefs, kings slaying lions, gods bestowing rings, and horses that look more sculpted than ridden. Everything here gleams, even the shadows. Your scratchy tunic suddenly feels even scratchier. You're greeted, though it's more of a visual scan than a welcome, by a row of guards in tall, segmented helmets. They don't speak, just nod you through, past the markets with their fig sellers and cinnamon peddlers, past the rows of carved stone that make you feel like you're walking through someone's very organized dream. At the city center, there's a courtyard filled with people, but all attention points in one direction, toward the raised platform at the far end, where the king is seated, not on a wooden throne or a cushioned bench, on a stage, draped in shimmering silk, layered in gold thread so heavy you wonder if he ever stands without assistance. This is not a humble monarch. This is not Cyrus in his clean white tomb. This is pageantry perfected. He wears a crown so tall it seems to need its own climate. His beard is manicured into elegant waves. And his robes? Each fold seems stitched with expectation. The king watches. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to smile. His stillness is performance. His image is law. And surrounding him, not courtiers exactly, but choreographers of perception. Artists, scribes, architects, astrologers. This isn't a palace. It's a set. And the empire runs on how it looks, how it feels, how it's remembered. Historians often say the Sassanids were obsessed with appearances, that they ruled not just by military strength, but by myth management. They revived Zoroastrianism as the state religion. Yes, but filtered through their own lens. Fire temples were rebuilt, texts recopied, rituals sharpened like ceremonial blades. It wasn't about remembering the past. It was about owning it. You walk through a nearby gallery. Yes, gallery. Because that's what it feels like, lined with stone reliefs taller than you. They don't show humility. They show domination. Ahura Mazda handing kings the divine ring of kingship. Enemies kneeling. Demons banished. Truth made visible in marble. One especially famous relief shows King Shapur I capturing the Roman Emperor Valerian. And yes, it's that Valerian, a Roman emperor taken alive, then supposedly used as a human footstool. Depending on which source you read, Roman sources, predictably, omit the furniture detail. Persian ones do not. You reach out, gently, and touch the carved ring in the god's hand. The stone is cool, smooth from centuries of wind and fingers. And beneath it, a faint line of script, Pahlavi. The script of the Sassanids, curved, flowing, not meant for speed, but for elegance. You leave the gallery, legs heavy, and enter a side corridor where musicians are rehearsing. Flutes, drums, and a hammered dulcimer. The rhythms are unfamiliar, long, winding, ceremonial. You close your eyes and let the music settle in your chest like warm syrup. You imagine a procession through the streets, priests leading, children scattering rose petals, dancers twirling in silk that catches the sun. And at the end, the king, unmoved, watching, listening, calculating. Even the fire temples here feel different. Less intimate, more monumental. You visit one on the city's edge, its flame enclosed in a tall chamber with domed ceilings and mirrors that bounce the light into every corner. You kneel beside the fire. Not for prayer, for observation. The flame here doesn't flicker. It poses. But not everyone buys into the grandeur. You meet a stoneworker outside the city gates. His hands are blackened from soot. His beard singed in spots. He carves royal images for a living. But he's not fooled. The kings want to look eternal. He mutters. But their stomachs grumble just like yours. He smiles. Then adds, still, they pay well. He hands you a small carving, unfinished. Just a face, rough and angular, but with sharp eyes. He shrugs. Supposed to be a priest. Or a demon. I forget. You take it anyway. Another relic for your growing museum of the tunic. Night falls fast here. The stars return. But the city doesn't sleep. Torches flicker. Musicians play on balconies. And beneath it all, the fire continues to burn, not wild. Not sacred, but styled. You lie on a flat rooftop, watching the smoke rise in perfectly symmetrical columns. Your limbs ache. Your mind swirls with symbols and gold thread in the question you can't quite ask aloud. If everything is image, where is the soul? And just as you feel your body begin to slip into sleep, a breeze carries a whisper from the hills beyond. Not in Pavali, not in chant, but older. A voice that reminds you, even curated fire still burns. You wake to the sound of armor, not clanking, but rustling. That quiet, dangerous sort of noise made by men who dress for battle like priests dressing for ritual. You blink against the dawn light, your back stiff from sleeping on the roof. Your dreams still caught somewhere between marble columns and empty scrolls. Below, in the courtyard, warriors are suiting up. Their tunics are tucked, their boots are strapped, but it's the armor that captures you. Chainmail woven so finely it shimmers like oil on water. Lamellar plates layered with obsessive precision. And the scent? Not blood, not yet, just smoke, metal, and sweat steeped in leather, like a blacksmith's dream that stayed too long in the heat. You make your way down, careful on the stone steps, feeling each one in your knees. A soldier glances your way and smirks. You're clearly not from around here. You carry yourself like someone who's spent more time with scrolls than swords. Still, one of them tosses you a padded vest. Put this on, he says. Even the gods don't like soft skin. You pull it over your tunic. It fits poorly. It smells worse. The soldiers move with rhythm. They speak little. Most of them are Sassanid cataphracts, heavy cavalry. Full body armor. Horses armored too. Not built for speed. Built for statement. When these men charge, it's not a battle, it's a wall collapsing forward. One older warrior sharpens a curved blade. The motion so practiced it's meditative. He pauses, wipes the sweat from his brow, and mutters something about the Romans coming back for more. You catch the tone. It's not fear, it's fatigue. A been there fought that shrugged to the endless seesaw of empire. And that's the thing about the Sassanids. They weren't just fighters. They were re-fighters. They spent centuries battling Rome, then Byzantium, over and over again, like two exhausted boxers circling the same patch of dirt. Border towns changed hands more often than some people changed sandals. Historians still debate which empire came out on top. Rome had the numbers. Persia had the terrain. Each claimed moral superiority. Each accused the other of corruption. And in the middle, villagers, temples, and fire that never asked for war. You follow the soldiers out to the training field. Rows of targets. Practice dummies stuffed with straw and wearing the sad remains of old armor. Arrows thud into wood. Spears whistle through air. The commander barks orders in Middle Persian. And the rhythm continues, metal on metal. Leather against flesh. Silence between the blows. You pick up a practice sword. It's heavier than you expect. When you swing, It nearly pulls your shoulder from the socket. A nearby boy laughs. You can't even be mad. He's right. But you try again. Slower this time. Less muscle. More balance. Your arm still aches. But your swing connects, barely, with the side of the dummy. It's progress. Kind of. A soldier pats your back. We all start there, he says. Just don't be there when the arrows come. Speaking of which, off in the distance, a rider appears, galloping fast, dust rising behind him like a trail of smoke. When he dismounts, he doesn't speak, just hands the commander a scroll. The wax seal is cracked. The parchment stained. Whatever it says, it's not good. The commander reads, nods, rips the parchment in half and throws it in the fire. You don't ask. You don't need to. The soldiers are moving now. Packing, strapping, preparing not just for defense, but for distance. You walk with them for a time. Through rocky valleys and dry brush. No one sings. No one jokes. The silence is thick, but not tense. Just tired. You stop to rest at an old shrine. The fire inside is weak. Barely flickering. One of the younger soldiers kneels, touches his forehead to the stone, and whispers a prayer under his breath. It's not theatrical. It's personal, like asking for permission to keep surviving. You step outside, letting the sun warm your face. You're beginning to understand something important, for all their silk and spectacle. The Sassanids knew war was ugly. They didn't worship violence. They endured it, managed it, ritualized it. One fringe account claims that before battle, some generals would visit fire temples not to pray for victory, but to confess their fear. Not to gods, to the flame itself. You can believe it. You part ways with the soldiers near the edge of a canyon. Their path veering toward yet another disputed border. You wish them safety. They offer you a flask of sour wine and the half-smile of men who've seen too much to believe in luck. You walk east again, the land quiet behind you, the clang of armor still echoing in your chest. And then you smell it, saffron, pine, and something faintly ancient. Not war, memory. Because now, beyond the battles and beyond the banners, you're headed toward a place where the flame still flickers. Not for kings, not for conquest, but for continuity. You find the path more by instinct than direction, just a narrowing of the hills. A shift in the birdsong, a hush in the trees that says, this way, traveler. The terrain softens here, the rocks growing rounder, the wind more curious than cruel. You step carefully, each footfall muffled by pine needles and the scent of old fire. And then you see it. The temple isn't grand, not like the ones in the Sassanid cities. Not shimmering with gold or draped in brocade. It's humble, almost hidden, nestled into the side of a weathered ridge. Moss climbs its outer walls like a shy lover. The door is wood, cracked, sun-bleached, and wrapped in a thin iron chain that's been undone. You push gently. The door opens with the kind of creak that seems rehearsed. Inside, the light comes not from torches, but from a single fire held in a low stone basin. No roaring blaze, no flickering theatrics, just a steady, breathing flame. It glows like a heart that's been beating for longer than memory. The air is still, thick with frankincense and something older, burnt cedar. Maybe, or the ghosts of prayers. And here's the strange part. Your body relaxes. Not just your shoulders or your knees, but all of you, as if this place remembers the shape of your stress and gently insists you leave it at the door. You sit, not in a pew, not on a cushion, just the stone floor, smooth and cool, grounding you like an anchor in soft water. The fire doesn't judge, it just burns. A priest enters from a side chamber. His robes are plain, his beard is short. He doesn't greet you like a host, nor like a stranger. He simply nods and kneels beside you, eyes fixed on the flame. No sermon, no instructions. This is Zoroastrianism as it was before the crowns got involved, before state decrees and courtly dramas. Just the fire, the breath, the balance. Historians still debate how much of early Zoroastrianism survives intact. The scriptures, Avesta, have been lost and reconstructed over centuries. Sometimes pieced together from oral fragments. Sometimes outright guessed. But here, in this room, the guessing stops. There's nothing theoretical about heat, about light, about silence shared between two beating hearts. You glance at the priest. He doesn't speak, but he lifts one hand, two fingers raised. Not in blessing, but in rhythm. Good thoughts. You remember. He raises another. Good words. And the third. Good deeds. Simple. Almost embarrassingly simple. And yet, it lands in your chest like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples move outward. You close your eyes and try it. Not as a chant, as a choice. You think of all the kings and soldiers and empires you've wandered through. How many claimed to protect this very flame? How many twisted it, bent it, used it to light their parades and justify their wars? But here, it doesn't feel used. It just is. The priest stands, slow and creaky, like a tree remembering it once was wind. He disappears behind a curtain. You're alone again with the flame. You notice something then. On the wall opposite the basin. Carved into the stone, not recently, not by imperial decree, is a symbol. A winged figure. The Faravahar. Not a god. Not quite. A symbol of the inner spirit. The soul that chooses. That steers. You've seen it stamped on coins. Etched in palaces. Turned into jewelry sold in noisy markets. But here, without gold or politics, it feels personal. The figure's face is worn smooth. Time doesn't care for noses. But the wings remain, outstretched, symmetrical. You reach out and trace one edge. Your fingers tingle. That same scratchy tunic rustles slightly as you shift position. A tile from the Magi. A carved Parthian token. A broken seal from a ruined gate. All these things tucked close to your body, but now they feel external. Like souvenirs from a dream you're waking from. Because something here feels final. And just as you start to believe in peace, a voice calls from outside. Soft, but urgent. You stand, knees popping. The priest has returned. He gestures you toward the door. Not a command, an invitation. Outside, the air has changed. Not just cooler, but charged. Like something big has just ended. Or begun. You step out, squint against the new sun and realize, the fire is behind you now. But it's still inside you. The priest bows once, deep and long. You do the same. Then you turn away, not toward the road you came from, but upward, toward a path that winds between high cliffs and disappears into mist. Because beyond ritual, beyond empire, something else is stirring. A change not just in leaders, but in language. A new script, a new sound, and a prophet who will say, "There is no God but God." You climb slowly, feet brushing loose pebbles off the narrow mountain trail. The mist thickens, curling around your arms like lazy cats. Cold and curious, somewhere behind you, the fire temple fades into the fog, its glow dimmer now. More like memory than flame. And ahead, the air sharpens. It smells not of incense or ash, but of water, of change. You crest the ridge and find a small outpost, just a scattering of tents and low stone huts perched precariously above the valley. Men and women gather around a central fire. But there are no priests here. No armored warriors. Just merchants, travelers, translators of things unspoken. You're offered a seat beside a man with ink-stained fingers and a voice like dry silk. He introduces himself with a grin and a cough. "They call me the scribe," he says, but mostly, I listen. Then he offers you a scrap of parchment, covered in flowing lines of what looks like Arabic. But, not quite. It's Kufic, he says, the script of beginnings. Before things got ornate, before they got official. You squint at the letters, angular, sparse, elegant in their restraint. This is early Islam, still in its skeletal form. No minarets, no empires, just voices in the desert, learning to write what had only ever been heard. And you sit there, wrapped in your dusty cloak, as he speaks of a time just beginning to unfold. A time when fire temples still flickered, but were slowly going dark. When Zoroastrians tried to hold onto a world slipping through their fingers. When villages debated in whispers what the new prayers meant, and whether they would be forced to say them. One woman, older, her veil loose with age, taps your knee. "Do you know the Surah of the Dawn?" she asks. You shake your head. She smiles. Then sings it, soft, measured, almost trembling. The syllables hover in the air like mist refusing to fall. It's beautiful, and terrifying. Because it's not just a new religion. It's a new rhythm, a new architecture of sound and thought. Historians still argue whether early Islam in Persia was met with violence or folded in gently, like dough rising under patient hands. The truth, of course, is both. Some towns resisted, some converted quietly, some vanished. You imagine a fire temple, still glowing, its priest reciting gathas as someone carves the Shahada into the outer wall. One belief wrapping around another like vines competing for the same patch of sun. But here's the part no one talks about. How long both flames burned together. How some people kept their Faravahar necklace hidden beneath a new robe. How mothers whispered both Asha and Allah into their children's ears at bedtime. How a scribe might copy verses from the Quran with fingers still stained from transcribing Avesta hymns. The scribe beside you hands over another fragment, this one older. Written in Pahlavi, the Middle Persian script of empire. Now fading, replaced. You trace the lines. Then the Kufic again. They look nothing alike, and yet both tremble with meaning. He shrugs. Languages don't fight, he says. People do. You nod. Because here, in this transitional hush between Zoroastrian Persia and Islamic Iran, everything breathes uncertainty, the kind that stings, but also offers possibility. You leave the outpost at dusk, your pockets now heavier with scraps of language, your head full of half-formed verses. The path down the other side is steeper, more worn. As you descend, you hear distant chanting, not fire hymns this time, but prayers toward Mecca, voices woven into a new direction. You pass a crumbling shrine. Inside, two carvings remain. One of Ahura Mazda, barely legible beneath soot, and one of the name Muhammad, etched more recently, still sharp. They do not touch, but they share the same wall. And just as your feet begin to ache and the wind picks up again, you come across a small boy tending goats. He waves, points to a cave in the distance. Old temple, he says. Now we just sit there when it rains. You wave back. Because sometimes, what's holy isn't the place, it's the pause. You reach the valley floor just as the evening call to prayer echoes across the hills. It rises from a nearby village, soft, cracked by distance, but unwavering. You pause, feeling it move through your chest like a tuning fork. There's no one else on the road. Just you and the dust and the steady hum of change. The village you enter isn't marked by gates or banners. No Zoroastrian symbols. No crescents yet. Just mud brick homes slumped like sleepy animals, clustered around a dry square. Children run barefoot through alleys. A woman kneads dough under a fig tree, her hands rhythmic, her eyes scanning the horizon. You feel it immediately. This is a place between. Not fully old, not fully new. The kind of village that doesn't make it into textbooks because it didn't conquer anything. It just adapted. An old man waves you over. His beard is silver, his robes patched in more places than not. You're not from here, he says, not unkindly. But you're walking like someone who used to be. He sits you beside a shallow fire pit and hands you a bowl of lentil stew. You eat. It's salty, warm, with just a whisper of cumin, comfort masquerading as simplicity. We used to tend a fire here. He says, not looking at you. Right over there. It was small, but it never went out. Until the tax collector came. You blink. Did he put it out? No. He taxed it. You choke on a chickpea. He chuckles. No joke. Said if it's always burning, it must be earning. You both laugh, but his eyes say something else. Something about loss you're not allowed to call grief. He goes on. Some stayed. Some left for the cities. Some became Muslim. Some just stopped choosing. He gestures at the hills. The land doesn't mind. It just waits. Historians still argue over how deeply Zoroastrianism remained rooted in the countryside. Some claim it vanished swiftly under Islamic rule. Others point to tombstones, chants, and stubborn elders who whispered the old prayers long after the muezzin arrived. But here, in this bowl of soup and stories, it feels less like a religion erased, and more like a language forgotten mid-sentence. A boy joins you, maybe 12, eyes curious and sharp. He carries a book, not a Quran, not an Avesta, something in between, verses of Rumi, scratched into soft leather, half Persian, half Arabic. He opens it and points to a line. I was a fire worshipper, now a servant at the mosque. You nod. This is what fusion feels like. Not clean, not polite, but inevitable. That same scratchy tunic you've been wearing feels a little looser now, worn thin by the road and the turning of centuries. You shift, and it sighs against your skin like old parchment. The old man stands. Want to see the last altar? You follow. It's behind a crumbling stable, where goats now nap under collapsed beams. The altar is barely there, just a round stone with a blackened dent in the center. Someone, long ago, built a tiny windbreak of mud brick around it. Someone else scribbled a verse from the Quran across the top. You kneel, not to pray, just to see. Ash still clings to the edges. Dry, ancient, stubborn. The boy touches your shoulder. My grandmother said this fire knew her name. You believe her. And then, almost shyly, he pulls a scrap from his robe, a shard of pottery. Painted in bright blue and gold. A Faravahar, barely visible beneath the glaze. My uncle told me to hide it. He whispers, but I don't want to. You don't take it. You don't say he should keep it. You just nod. Because there's something holy about the fact that it's still here. That he is still here. Night falls faster in places like this. The villagers light oil lamps. The scent of garlic and bread fills the square. Somewhere, a goat sneezes. And off in the distance, another call to prayer begins. But in your hands, your fingers still remember the heat of the old altar stone. And your body? It feels suspended. Not in time, not in faith, but in something else entirely. A memory of something that refuses to die, even if no one remembers why it started. And just as you lean back to stretch your aching legs, a voice calls to you from the edge of the square. You look like someone who needs a map. The man with the map has the kind of face that's hard to date, lined, sun-baked, with eyes that could be 40 or 90. Depending on the light, he beckons you into a small tent stitched from several kinds of fabric. None of them matching, all of them patched. Inside, it's dark but warm. The air smells of ink and old paper and that faint tang of goat hair. Like an antique shop at a desert bazaar. The man lays out a scroll across a rug, its surface buckled and cracked with age. But the drawings? Oh, they're alive. Not just mountains and rivers, though those are there, but flickers of script dancing along the contours. Tiny notes in multiple hands. Arrows drawn and redrawn. Sections blotted out and replaced with something newer. Or older, depending on your perspective. This, he says, tapping the edge, was once the world of the Zoroastrians. You trace the borders. Ancient Media, Persia, Bactria, names you've heard in whispers and textbooks. But here they bloom in ink. Each a fire temple, each a city where Asha was once the law. And this? He points to another set of markings. Newer, less precise. The places where fire went dark. You frown, not at the changes, but at how personal they feel. Like someone mapping a fading heartbeat. He chuckles. We map what we miss. No one draws what's permanent. There's a silence, the kind that fills in your bones. Then he begins to speak, not in facts or figures, but in stories. A village where women kept fire burning under cooking pots long after the temple was gone, calling it tradition. But knowing better, a merchant who tattooed the Faravahar under his sleeve claimed it was just decoration. A child, born under Islamic rule, who dreamt of a flame that spoke his name. Historians still debate whether these were isolated cases or signs of an underground faith. But the map doesn't care. The ink flows just the same. He rolls up the parchment. Careful, reverent, then gestures to a pile of small stones stacked in the corner. Choose one, he says. You hesitate, then pick a smooth, flat one, warm to the touch. He nods. That one's from Istakhr, home to fire priests. Burned, rebuilt, burned again. That stone's seen more worship and war than most kings. You pocket it. It presses into your leg with every step from then on, a quiet reminder that belief, like stone, endures pressure more than heat. You leave the tent with the mapman's words echoing in your ears. Religion isn't a flag, he said, it's a shadow. It moves when you move. Back outside, the village square is quiet. Stars stitch the sky in patterns your ancestors might have named but you can't. You walk past shuttered windows and a tired cat dozing beside a well. Then, from a doorway, a whispered voice. They used to bless the water here. You turn. An elderly woman, face like creased parchment, watches you. She nods toward the well. We'd whisper the 5 holy names before drawing water. For purity, for the earth, for truth. My mother said it made the water sweeter. You approach. Cup your hands, and draw a sip. It tastes like stone and time and the ghost of something warm. And now your tongue remembers what sweetness meant before sugar. The woman smiles, satisfied. See? The stone from the tent presses into your pocket again. And you realize, this isn't a journey through belief systems. It's a journey through echoes. That same scratchy tunic you wear has faded even more now. Threadbare and ghost-colored, it no longer feels like protection. It feels like memory. And just as you sit beside the well, trying to hold onto the quiet, a young girl runs up carrying something cupped in both palms. She opens them to show a tiny oil lamp. We found it behind the stable. She whispers. Papa says it's old. He says it still works. She places it beside you. You don't light it. You don't need to. Because now, everywhere you walk, you carry flame. You wake to the sound of sandals slapping against sun-baked earth. The kind of rhythmic shuffle that says someone has somewhere to be, but not urgently. The village is already stirring. Smoke curls from tiny clay chimneys. Roosters mutter their confusion into the new day. The world smells like bread baking. Warm stone. And yesterday's ashes. You stretch. And your back cracks like old papyrus. That little oil lamp still sits beside you. Unlit, but somehow more vivid in the daylight. Like it belongs more to now than the past. You tuck it into your satchel. Careful not to bump the map stone from Istakhr. Your pockets are becoming a reliquary. You follow the road out. Which is less a road and more a suggestion, a dusty crease between fennel-strewn hills. There's a stillness here, interrupted only by the occasional bee or lizard. But something pulls you forward. Not curiosity exactly, but a soft insistence, like breath rising before word. And then, there it is. A field of ruins. You blink. Not majestic columns or gold-flecked murals, no. Nothing cinematic here. Just stubby pillars. Cracked foundations. The sad geometry of a forgotten purpose. Grass pokes through what was once a courtyard. A toppled lintel stone bears the barely visible relief of a winged figure, Faravahar. Arms spread, face weather-worn into a blur. This was once a fire temple. Maybe not the grandest, maybe not even important by the standards of empire. But it was. You walk through it slowly, as if the stones might remember the footsteps. There's a small pool in the center. Dry now, but blackened around the edges, burn marks. You imagine it, once filled with oil or sand or sacred water. Flickering with controlled flame, light that never died. And tell someone, some moment, let it. You run your hand along the stone and feel the chill in your fingertips. You shiver, and it's not from the wind. A small plaque nearby offers a translation, likely posted by some underfunded archaeology department decades ago. It reads, Temple of Mithra, approximately 1st century CE, abandoned after fire rituals banned under Arab Caliphate. Local legend says the flame here burned for 187 years. You crouch and brush the dirt away from another stone, faint carvings in Pahlavi script. You can't read it, but your hands move over the shapes like braille. They feel oddly familiar, like the echo of something you once knew in a dream. And here's your quirky fact of the day. Some of these smaller temples were maintained not by priests, but by family lineages, generations who passed the flame like a surname. Your campfire? That's amateur hour. These people devoted lifetimes to keeping one flame alive. But eventually, laws shifted, new rulers, new taxes, new gods. In some areas, fire temples were closed quietly. In others, they were torched, and in still others, they were left to decay, untouched, unclaimed, a kind of truce by neglect. Historians still argue whether the slow death of these temples was religious, economic, or political. The truth, as always, sits uncomfortably in the overlap. You step deeper into the ruins, and suddenly, you see it, not with your eyes, but somewhere beneath the skin. Robed figures chanting, firelight dancing across polished stone, the smell of pine resin and old sweat and ritual oil, a mother carrying her child forward to be blessed, a priest murmuring verses older than any scroll. It's not magic, it's memory, yours, or the stones. Hard to say. You sit on a slab that might have been an altar. It's cracked now, half swallowed by moss. You run your hand along its surface. It feels like closure, but as you begin to rise, your hand catches something. A line carved into the side of the stone. Almost too faint to see. You lean closer. Not Pahlavi, not Arabic, something else. Greek? You squint. It reads, To the fire that sees all. And suddenly, your spine tingles. Because that phrase doesn't belong to one faith. It's universal. Like some lonely soul hundreds of years ago, wanted to leave behind a truth that could outlast translation. That same scratchy tunic of yours feels tighter again, like it's absorbing the weight of every voice that ever sang in this space. You exhale slowly, and just as you begin to leave, a wind picks up. It swirls through the temple, lifting dry leaves and whispers. It smells like ash, not burning, burned. And at the edge of the ruins, you see a child watching. Same girl from the village. She holds out a basket of dates. For the road, she says, like it's a sacred offering. You take one, bite down, and it's shockingly sweet, almost too sweet. From the old grove, she says, the one by the water shrine. You nod, because somehow, the sweetness tastes like endurance. And as you step back onto the trail, the ruins behind you dissolve into the hillside, like something too shy to stay in full view. But the fire? That still burns somewhere inside you. The road now turns stony, uneven, each step jostling your knees like a reminder that this journey wasn't meant for comfort. Pebbles lodge in your sandals. Your toes throb. That same scratchy tunic chafes at your neck, now damp with sweat. But you don't stop, because up ahead, framed by the bend of the hills, is something unmistakable. A tower. It rises from the landscape like a bone from ancient earth. Not tall, just persistent. Square base. Flared top. A Zoroastrian tower of silence. Dogma. The closer you get, the quieter everything becomes. No birds. No bees. Even the wind softens, like it's treading lightly around memory. The slope steepens. Your calves burn. But finally, you're there. Standing at the foot of the stone structure where the dead were once brought for sky burial. You don't go in. No one does. It's taboo now. And besides, the vultures are long gone. But you walk the perimeter slowly, tracing the circle of stone where corpses once lay under the open sky. Offered not to decay, but to purification. It feels reverent, not grim, not gruesome, just deeply aware of endings. Zoroastrians believed that death was a form of pollution. A body, once the soul had fled, was a threat to the purity of earth, fire, and water. So they placed the dead in towers like this, to be returned to nature by the birds. Historians still debate whether this practice was ever universal or only regional. Some towers, like this one, are preserved. Others were torn down or repurposed, turned into fortresses or prison cells. Their sacred shape forgotten. You run your fingers along the stone. It's cool, smooth. You imagine the hands that built it, laying stones with trembling reverence. Knowing their own bodies would one day lie here too, you step to the edge and look out. The view is wide, hills folding into hills. No cities, no walls, just the long, sighing sprawl of ancient land. And in that moment, something stirs in your chest. A recognition that this place isn't about death, it's about continuity. About giving back what was borrowed. You sit on a low ledge. The stone warm from the sun. The air carries a faint mineral scent, dry lichen and old dust. Your stone from Istakachar is still in your pocket. You take it out, place it gently on the ledge beside you. A quiet offering, or maybe a conversation. And here's a quirky little footnote. Some modern Zoroastrians still practice variations of sky burial. Where it's permitted, others have turned to cremation or burial, modifying the ritual for contemporary life. Belief bends, but it doesn't break, like copper wire. Flexible, but still charged. You stand and take one last look. The tower doesn't need you to understand it. It's not trying to prove anything. It just is. As you descend the slope, your knees creak, your sandals slip on gravel. You're getting close to the end now. You can feel it, not just in your legs, but in the air, thicker, fuller, like the last breath before sleep. You pass a small cairn of stones. Someone has left a scarf draped over the top, sun-bleached. Frayed, a symbol, maybe, or just the wind's idea of poetry. And then, as if summoned, a figure appears on the path ahead. An old woman, walking with a basket, her face wrapped in translucent linen. She smiles as you approach. Not startled, like she's been waiting. You've come far, she says. You nod, too tired for cleverness. She hands you something from the basket. A small round fruit, pomegranate. Split at the top, seeds glistening like rubies. Take it, she says. It's in season. You bite. It's tart, cold, alarming in its vitality. And just as you're savoring the burst of flavor, she adds, you know, they used to place these beside the dead. You pause mid-chew. For sweetness in the next world. She adds, with a wink. And then she's gone, continuing down the trail, her scarf dancing behind her like a kite tail in slow motion. You stand there a moment. Pomegranate juice on your fingers. Wind curling around your ankles. The tower of silence behind you. The living earth ahead. And somewhere between them, you. The path narrows now, hemmed in by dry brush and the occasional twisted tree whose branches look like arms reaching out for forgotten prayers. You move slower, not out of exhaustion, though you feel it, but because something inside you doesn't want this to end. Your tunic, now a pale ghost of what it was, clings to your skin. You smell like travel, dust, fruit juice, the faint smokiness of old incense that somehow lingers on your skin from places long past. The eye-stack HR stone presses against your hip. That little lamp weighs more than its size should allow. And yet, you don't feel burdened. You feel full. You crest one final hill. Below, a quiet plain stretches out, dotted with small homes, fields, and somewhere in the distance, the glint of running water. The sun is setting behind you, casting long shadows ahead like the arms of ancestors ushering you forward. You descend slowly, your feet tracing a path countless others once walked, pilgrims, farmers, priests, refugees. You imagine them all, robes flapping in the wind, hands shielding eyes from the same sunset. Maybe one of them carried a lamp. 2. At the base of the hill, you find the remnants of a small village, not abandoned, not quite, but certainly faded. A few homes with clay walls, smoke rising from one roof, a single donkey chewing something too stubborn to give up. You pass an old man tending a fire in a shallow pit. He nods without speaking. You sit beside him, uninvited but welcomed. He tends the fire with practiced hands, coaxing it to life. The flames are small but steady. He hands you a bit of bread. You tear it, chew in silence. Then, without looking at you, he says, "They tried to put out our fire." You say nothing. The fire crackles softly, but you can't smother what people remember. He says, as if responding to a question you didn't ask, "You just have to keep feeding it." And that's when you understand. This journey wasn't about seeing ruins or reading plaques or even remembering the rites. It was about finding the embers and realizing you're one of them. Because belief doesn't die, it adapts. It hides in corners. It survives in songs, in lullabies, in the way someone arranges stones or whispers to a fire. Historians still debate when Zoroastrianism ended, but they're looking for the wrong signs. It didn't end. It migrated into memories, habits, quiet rituals, into you. The old man rises, patting his knees. "I've got water boiling if you want tea." You nod. You follow him to a small room lit only by the stove's glow. He pours dark tea into chipped cups. You sip. It's bitter, perfect. He adds a sugar cube to his, lets it melt on his tongue. Then, with a small smile, he reaches for something. A scroll. You recognize it by feel before he opens it. That same worn parchment from the mapman's tent. But now, it's yours. The symbols swirl, familiar and foreign. You can't read the script. But somehow, you don't need to. You look at the man. But he's already dozing by the fire. You sip your tea, roll the scroll carefully, and tuck it under your arm. And outside, the stars begin to emerge. That same sky, that same silence, that same firelight brushing the edge of history. Your knees ache, your hands smell like dust and tea, your eyes sting with sleep. And somewhere in the folds of your tunic, the little lamp shifts. Maybe you'll light it someday. Maybe you already have. The night is full now. No more footsteps, no more maps. Just the hush of wind curling through half-buried stones. And the occasional crackle of embers dying into coal. You're seated beneath an open sky. The stars above like scattered seeds across dark velvet. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then is quiet. Your hands relax into your lap. The scent of old parchment and cooling tea drifts upward. And that tunic, softened by the miles, settles gently across your shoulders like a memory wrapping itself around you. You've traveled through temples and towers, deserts and ruins, but more than that, you've traveled inward, through the echoes of a people who carried their fire not just in stone halls, but in hearts, in habits, in the way they faced the setting sun with whispered prayers and quiet strength. Now, even the breath of the wind feels slower. Your eyelids flutter once, then again. Behind them, images linger. flame licking up from an altar. Pomegranate seeds like gems in your palm. The way old voices called out into silence, and were heard. Sleep is near now. It settles over your limbs like fine sand, smoothing out the edges of thought, tugging gently at your awareness. The stars pulse. The fire dims. And your journey, quietly, reverently, concludes.